everyone. This blog is going to be about the final reflections from the trip. Our teacher gave us kind of like a layout of questions to answer. So I wrote out all my answers and everything, thought about everything and wrote it all out on the screen that's in front of me, so I'm going to be reading off of that as I'm posting or blogging this video. So looking back at my pre-trip questions, I thought it would be crazy because of the time change and just being in a completely different continent for 5 weeks, which at the time I thought 5 weeks was pretty long, but it was actually not that long. It went by really quickly. I hope to learn off of my professor and my peers that I was going with. I didn't even think about my Ugandan peers at that time because like I said, I didn't even think about it. I also hope to build relationships with everyone, which I did end up doing with the Ugandan students and also the professors at Ndejje University. And according to my video, I was pretty excited about the communication, which definitely ended up being a learning experience with the cultural differences and the language barrier. Some things I had hoped to gain from this was personal growth. I did learn how to adapt to the environment, and just when I was getting comfortable and familiar with everything, it was time to go. So that was kind of sad, but it was neat because I got that new routine of everything. So with adapting comes learning more about the culture, which is something I was also excited to learn about, which I ended up learning a lot about by interacting with the Ugandan students. And lastly, I hope to get out of my comfort zone, which I definitely did. I got out of my normal routine at home, like I said before, and I was able to adopt this new environment and make a new routine, which caught on quickly, which was really nice, so the transition was pretty smooth. I also got out of my comfort zone by interacting with everyone and even the language barrier and trying the food there, which I was not a big fan of. So the next question is going to be, what did I learn about public health while in Uganda? So going out into the field, I learned a lot about public health, and also I was able to compare and contrast it with public health in the United States through group discussions and the field work that we did. In my community, we performed needs assessments by going to different households and asking what their greatest needs are. Instead of what we were used to here in the United States, like mental health or nutrition, their needs were more environmental and more towards sanitation, or at least in my community that I visited. I didn't really know what a latrine was prior to the trip, so I definitely got to learn that and see a couple of them, and also see what it was like the living conditions were not having a latrine. I also learned what a borehole was, which is where they get their water from, and I also learned what a rubbish pit was because I had no idea what that was, and that's something where they throw their trash into. See, these things we don't have in the United States, so it was definitely cool to learn about that kind of stuff. With all of that, I also learned what materials were needed and how to properly manage it and keep up with it. So by learning those things, I also learned about the attitudes of the community members and what they think is most important to them. So a lot of the community members expected these Ndejje students to come and visit them every year. So a lot of them are in that attitude, oh, we're not going to fix these stuff because the students are going to come and fix it for us. So that was definitely something that was different, and it was kind of saddening to me to know that they had that mindset. I also learned about the health in Uganda and what diseases were most prevalent in each community. So I learned that in the community that I went into. For example, I learned that individuals that have malaria, there's this plant, I can't quite remember what it's called, but they cook it up and they do some stuff to it and then they eat it, and it's supposed to help with the symptoms that they have. And then I also learned that HIV is very high and that a lot of the schools there have abstinence-only education. So we got to talk to a school and talk to the students about some of that stuff, which was really cool. What did I like least? So as previously stated, I did not like the food. I had a hard time adjusting to the food. By week 3, I had lost 10 pounds pretty much, and yeah, it was a hard adjustment for me, but I did adapt and learned what I really liked and then what I did not like, so that that's probably what I like the least. So what did I like the best? So there are two different questions, like what did I like best and what did I find most rewarding? So I'm putting those two together because they kind of go hand in hand. So the experience I had at Endeja University would not have gone as it had without the people that we have met. They made my transition, they made everybody else's transition into this country very smooth by helping us Americans every chance that they could. They like would go out of their way to help us, which we didn't really want to be treated differently, but it was very nice having that, like, with their hospitality and then like the language barrier and the food. But working in my field group has been the most rewarding because that is who I spent most of my time with, so I was able to learn from them, and they also challenged me with my knowledge, which made it into a learning experience for them as well, because I got to teach them about public health in America also. So that was really cool, and that was definitely a reward, being able to use and like show like my skills and like what I've learned these past 4 years in school and like kind of teach them. What did I find most challenging? So even though the toilets were different, the showers were cold, the food was different, that was actually not the most challenging. I think the most challenging thing was the language barrier. So they speak English there, but it's like they have like an accent. It's very thick and it's like hard to understand. So like, and like a lot of them speak, very softly. So like we have to ask them to repeat themselves and like talk slower, and like they had to do that like likewise with us. And then another challenge that I had, I gotta sneeze, excuse me, I have to sneeze, so if it comes out I apologize. Let's see, so another challenge that we had was learning how to cope with Ugandan time. So like we would plan to meet at a certain time, but like our group members wouldn't show up until like 45 minutes to an hour later, so that was pretty hard to like adjust to, and that was a fun little adjustment. So what did I actually learn? So after rewatching my first video on what I hope to learn from this trip, I would say that I learned everything that I hoped to. I definitely grew closer with my peers that I traveled with, and also with my professor, which is awesome, because like we did spend a lot of time together, but we didn't get like annoyed with each other. Like we all came together at the end. It was kind of like home. So in addition to the peers that I traveled with, I grew closer to my Ugandan peers as well. So as said before, it was a learning experience for both me and the other Ugandan students, and every time I got to talk about the United States, I was able to educate them on that, so that was pretty exciting. I got this opportunity several times in lectures with my group. We would talk about public health issues in Uganda, and then I would chime in and say, oh, well, in the United States, here's how like we would handle the situation, or here are the laws regarding that health issue. So we would talk about that. So by being able to do that, I learned a lot about like myself and what I was capable of teaching them. I learned a lot about their culture through the food that we ate and the environment that we were in. I learned what I enjoyed to eat and what I did not enjoy to eat. I learned how to bargain with people, which I first got practice with this while taking boda rides, which are motorcycles. So the Ugandan students told us like, oh, you should only be paying like this much for a boda ride to like this amount of distance, because they would overcharge us Americans, which we didn't really mind because it was like 25 cents, so it wasn't like that much, but like the fact that like they would overcharge us was kind of like offensive. So we learned how to bargain with them. So like before getting on a ride, we would say like, okay, like this much, and then if they would say no, we would walk away, and they'd be like, oh, okay, so we would go back. So that was actually kind of fun. So another thing I learned more about was myself. So as said before, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone, which I did. I learned how to interact with everybody there. I learned like the do's and don'ts. For example, like slang was a big thing in the language. So when conversing with them, I had to like watch what I was saying and like just like talk directly to them and like don't add any of the slang that we would use here in the United States because they wouldn't understand what it was. Let's see. So before this trip, we did make a blog about cultural competency. After this trip, I would say that I am definitely I'm leaning more towards like cultural competent. Pre-trip, I also said that, but I would definitely like lower myself because I was not prepared for some of the things that happened like as I thought I would. So like for example, some frustrating things about the culture was the work ethic. So the students like it's like different there, the way that they do things. Like the students were great to work with, don't get me wrong. It was just hard getting them to like some of them to communicate and combine ideas with. Like they would have they have due dates for stuff, so like we would have something due every day, like a daily group report. So it was hard because some of them wouldn't want to set up an extra time to meet so we can finish that, and like if we did, then some of them would not like chime in and like give their opinion on it. So it was kind of hard to like work with because I felt like sometimes I felt like I was doing all the work, or like me and the other American student in my group we were doing all the work. So that was a little frustrating at times. And then again, another frustrating thing, not that frustrating, but it was definitely different, was the Ugandan time. Like we were constantly behind schedule because we didn't know that we didn't realize like it was, oh yeah, it's normal to be like 30 minutes to an hour late. Like it's completely normal, like you don't get in trouble or anything. So that was definitely a learning experience. Like I'm a late person in general, but like I was actually early to everything here, which is not what I was used to. And then lastly, so sum up the trip in a single sentence or phrase. So I would definitely say that this was a trip of a lifetime, full of amazing people and experiences and life lessons. And I definitely can't wait to hear the stories about the people who will be going next year because it is seriously an awesome experience. And I just want everybody to be able to experience something like that. So yeah.